What's up, Florida gang? Welcome back to another episode. Today we're going to talk about the playoffs right in the last week of the regular season, kind of planting playoff seeds pretty much. Let's get right to it. The first team, you can say they have a green thumb, the Boston Celtics. Uh, Best team in the league right now, like in pretty much any like statistic. It's superstar loaded. But the question really is, so who do the Boston Celtics want to avoid? Like as good as they are, who do they want to avoid? And I would say you can talk about the Nuggets. I would say outside of the Nuggets. Everyone knows you kind of want to avoid the Nuggets.
I mean, so specifically talking first round, I would say, there is a very real possibility they get either the Heat or the 76ers in the first round, and that would suck. But I think they can uh, uh take either one of them. I think the Heat pose a bigger threat because the Sixers are kind of just getting back Embiid back, and I don't know how confident I am in them. But the Heat, obviously, we know their postseason history, specifically with the Celtics.
True. To be fair, Embiid has been pretty good since he's come back, though.
I
So
mean, no, Embiid's been awesome, but strictly talking playoffs, he
true.
generally isn't. But he also is, healthier. But still, even if Embiid is totally healthy, I think I would pick the Celtics in that series either way. Um, that being said, uh, I don't think they need to avoid anyone besides themselves. You like we see it time and time again. They beat themselves. They take a ton of threes, and if they're not making those threes, that they're not as dominant as they usually are. They tend to turn the ball over. Tatum settles. They settle into one-on-one play, and so I think they need to avoid beating themselves. And this roster will never be as stacked as it is right now. In the East, it probably won't be as weak as it always is. Right now, I mean, kind of seeds 2 through like 7 or 8. You're not super confident in any of them. I'm not crazy confident in the Celtics, but I'm more confident in the Celtics than anyone else. But it has to get done this year. And so you can't avoid any matchup with the Celtics because you have to beat everyone. If you don't make the finals with this roster, it's a disaster.
Yeah, I agree. I think especially just with their record in the past 2 years, if you don't make it to the finals at least, then you might want to try to make some moves again because, like you said, this is a stacked roster. I mean, the Celtics ha kind of have to make the finals for themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you pretty much answered one of the questions of what is the Celtics Achilles heel. I think I agree with you. It's themselves. The problem is they're loaded with stars, but every single one of their stars kind of has a rep to not always show up in big games. Drew Holiday, who I love, Jaylen Brown, who I love, Jason Tatum, who I'm a critic of, Kristaps Porzingis, who I'm a supporter of. All these guys have kind of a niche throughout their career of not
But
being particularly reliable. They have
Derek
a lot of,
White, Derek White knows how to win.
yeah, I love DeMarcus White. He's cool.
Yeah.
No, shout out to Derek. Good man.
No, but you're totally right. Like we saw it with the Mavs, Kristaps was kind of a disappearing act in the playoffs. Drew Holiday, he struggled from the field during the playoffs, although he was a big part of that championship run. Um, Evan Taven and Brown are inconsistent in the playoffs. And I think, but with this roster, you can afford inconsistency and still win.
Hmm.
The question is how much inconsistency? Like
Speaking of,
last year's inconsistency, it's not going to get it done. Um,
speaking
and
of
they were one game
inconsistency,
away.
they are the number one three-point shooting team in the league. They rely on like
Yeah.
49% of all their points to come from beyond the arc during the regular season. So sometimes that leads them to those really big down games if you're having a bad shooting night. Um, so I think that's something that could be used by other teams as an Achilles heel to kind of just focus on that to kind of use that against them. And again, the Celtics look great, and one of the reasons why they do look great is because of Kristaps, who helps them shoot threes, but also he's, I think, been statistically a top three all year long at taking advantage of mismatches, which is
Yes.
what the
Yeah.
Celtics are going to hunt. But this is where, again, back to the other question is where I see a Heat matchup again after 5 years now being dangerous just because of how well they strategize on defense, how good job Spo does playing team defense and having those guys ready to take advantage against the Celtics, and even if Kristaps trying to take advantage against them, just kind of have them all in a good rotation and things like that. So I would agree. I think the Miami Heat would definitely pose the biggest threat to the Celtics. It would be a fun game. It would be a fun series
I
to have
mean,
that.
yeah, the last person you want to see if you're Joe Mazzulla standing on the other sideline is Spo, you know. And the Celtics are better this year, but so are the Heat. Um,
Hmm.
and the Heat may not be, I mean, they may be as injured. They often get injured, just the Heat. But if they're not, they're gonna have some offense. They still have the strategy strategy what
Strategy.
they still have Spo. They still have Spo. And Jimmy Butler, playoff Jimmy, he always shows up in the first round. Um, so I think if I had to pick a matchup, it would be that one.
Yeah, I would
Yeah.
agree. And I guess that kind of brings us. We talked about how dominant they look. But do you guys even think that the bottom they look so dominant in the regular season, and they look like they could also be dominant in the postseason? But are you expecting them to look as dominant? Are you expecting them to look like maybe one of the former Warriors teams that lose one, maybe two playoff games up into the finals? Or is there really a lot of hope or chance for that? Are we really kind of expecting the Celtics squad to look like former Celtics squad that have their down games in the playoffs?
They absolutely should. Um, I don't know if they will. I mean, like I said earlier, the East is super weak. I mean, they have a lot of mid teams. Um, like 2 through 8. I don't know if you could trust any of them really. To be consistent like the Celtics have been. Um, so they should. The question is, I mean, the Hawks nearly took them to 7 games last year. So
And
I'm
they've
not.
beat them already, what, 2 out of 2 game or 2 out of 4 games this season.
Yeah,
So
I
maybe
I'm not. To,
they should watch
it,
out for the Hawks maybe in the first round.
I mean, we know how good the Hawks are in the plane. So
But they're probably going to be the 7th seed, so it won't be a problem for the Celtics if they're the 1 seed.
yeah,
So as far as like seeding, the Celtics they look like they have all the chance to grow into a nice playoff plan to be a dominant at the same time. They could also easily choke out. But to the Hawks and also kind of the Bulls, I want to talk about both those teams. They've kind of been secure to at least make the play-in now for a few games,
yeah,
just because of the way the East looks. But it's kind of been 10 teams after the Raptors have kind of just fallen out.
yeah.
But do you guys really how likely do you actually see the Bulls or the Hawks, if so, no, I guess it can't be both, Bulls or the Hawks having a chance at actually making the playoffs, aka beating either the Pacers, Heat, or Sixers, depending on which of those two teams are the other teams in the play-in.
Well, I mean, I trust the Hawks a lot more. To Deacon's point too. I mean, they've just been a beast in the play-in since the play-in started. They're undefeated. Um, the Bulls obviously, I don't know what's gonna happen there, but yeah, I mean, if you look at the Hawks record, pretty good. But like you said, it's probably gonna be either the Cavs, the Pacers, the Sixers, or the Heat, who all, in my opinion, are more playoff ready and playoff like teams than the Hawks. So I think it'll be really interesting to see because I think, at least for me, seeing any of those teams fall out of the playoffs instead of the Hawks will be almost surprising just because they all seem a lot more playoff like and playoff ready than the Hawks.
Yeah. For both these teams' sake, I hope they miss it. Just so they're not holding on to this core for one more year. But yeah, like you said, I could see the Hawks doing it. The Bulls, they're sneaky good in clutch games. They're
True.
one of the top 5 best teams, and that's led by DeMar DeRozan, who's one of the best clutch players. So I could see them maybe winning the playing game. But yeah, if it's like the Heat or the 76ers or even the Pacers that's waiting for them, I don't see either of those teams beating them. But it's a one game elimination, so you
True.
never know.
That's the thing. I mean, that's the thing. It's like March Madness. It's just one
Yeah,
game. You just I mean, for it's literally just I mean it's 2 games for the Hawks. I mean we're talking most of the Hawks or the Bulls, but even the Bulls, just 2 games. That's
yeah.
making it into the Sweet
Sweet
16
16.
in March Madness. So just a little
I
bit of a
mean,
Cinderella run. It's not too crazy.
and the Bulls last year, they nearly won two playing games to beat the Heat. The Heat. I mean, I think they were up like five with like 2 minutes left, and the Heat ended up winning. But I mean, so I think they both teams could absolutely do it. Uh, but yeah, I think if the 76ers are still in the play-in though, there's no chance they fall out.
Oh, okay. Well, good. Getting to the Sixers though. So for their playoff hopes to stay alive, what do they need to avoid doing? They've been very like kind of recent history playoff choke artists. They've been great at it. We've had the whole Ben Simmons drama kind of develop out of that. It's also happened after Ben Simmons. It's just been kind of something that's been very consistent around the Philadelphia 76ers organization basketball team. So what do they need to avoid doing from previous years, even last year, to avoid that failure?
Joel Embiid.
Um, yeah, I mean, Marvin summed it up. Joel Embiid has to be Joel Embiid of the regular season. I think coaching was also a big part of it, and Nick Nurse is not the coach that Doc Rivers is, so that's a
True.
good thing. And if Maxey can, he doesn't have to score 52, but if he can be consistent every night, like he was early in the season when he and Embiid were dominating, really, I really think they have a chance to go multiple rounds.
I agree.
Um, I mean, I don't love I like the depth of the roster, but I don't love the roster as a championship contender by any means. Um, I think there's just a lot of role players, and I think they just need one more guy. And Tobias Harris could be that guy, but he's been pretty inconsistent lately. So,
I hear you.
um,
I hear you as far as star power.
mhm,
I love the roster. I don't love the way it's looked, but also that's mostly been without Joel Embiid.
yeah,
There is some stat that's been floating around that the Sixers have better winning percentage with their stars healthy than the Celtics, who are the best team. So that's pretty dang good. And like you said, Maxey was looking awesome. I love Tyrese Maxey. Everyone knows that. But he's been also really inconsistent. So that's a really big issue because you nailed
yeah,
it on the head. You said he has to be consistent. And so this is in a way, so they got Joel back. That's awesome. But as far as having Joel play, this is almost a nightmare situation for them. He's just coming back off an injury, hasn't played with the team for a while. They've gotten a few other pieces since Joel's last left. Um, again, that roster, I personally like that roster. Maybe they are missing a star, but I like that roster a lot. I think it's really, really deep, has a lot of different pieces.
yeah,
And it hasn't looked always great. And maybe that's because Joel isn't playing. But either way, they haven't been that used to Joel playing. He just came back. And then to add on top of that, you could argue that one of the big problems with the Sixers' playoff success has been Joel Embiid's health. He's just coming back now from an injury. That's not really what you're looking for if you're the 76ers.
no,
This is not an ideal way to enter the playoffs. I
To
mean, good for
compound
them.
that, to compound that too is it seems like they also kind of rushed him into coming back too because they needed a win. Because like we said, they're in that play-in picture right now and they don't want to be there. So I think they had to bring him back a little faster than they would like to, just so they can at least hopefully secure a top six spot and not need to worry about an extra game or two to get seven or eight seed. So I agree. That sums it up. Joel Embiid, like I said, his health, his play, and we've seen too, Maxi plays a lot better when Embiid's on the court too. So at the end of the day, I think it really just comes down to Joel Embiid, whether it's him playing or him playing like his MVP self, like he does in the regular season. But at the end of the day, I think Joel Embiid needs to realize that he's gonna be the success of this team.
yeah. But I also don't think it's the end all be all this year for the 76ers. If they don't, like you said, there's not super high expectations going into this. Um, so yeah, I mean, and they got a ton of cap space next summer. So if they reload with this deep roster, I think they could be super dangerous. I think the expectation this year should be to win a playoff series, though.
Oh, for sure. At least one.
Yeah,
You can't lose first round.
no,
That's
like,
true. I mean, to that point, you have the three teams, Pacers, Sixers, Heat, fighting for that last six seed spot, really. Out of those teams, who needs to avoid the play in the most?
The the Cavs are right there too. I mean, the Cavs could go to the seven seed still too.
That's
But
crazy.
like I said, I think the Sixers low-key want to avoid it the most just because of Embiid. You don't want to have him play extra games with a kind of banged up knee. Um, so in that sense, I think the Sixers want to avoid that the most. And recently too, Maxey and Tobias have been sitting games. I don't know how serious those injuries are, but health-wise, I think the Sixers are going to need it the most because right now their three stars or their three main players are all seem a bit injury concerned. So if they can get an extra game or two of rest, that'd be really good for them.
Yeah. Speaking like just purely, because I agree that the Sixers, you don't want to play any extra games with
Hmm.
the injury troubles, but like purely off basketball logistics, if you're the Pacers, you have the lack of experience. The other teams you're going against in the play and don't. Um,
True.
I think that you absolutely want to lock in a playoff spot because, although I mean, they do have Pascal who has championship experience, but all in all, the whole roster is it's pretty young and they lack experience. So I think if they can, if it's possible, they cannot fall into that plane.
I mean, you don't. I
Um,
mean, the Cavs. I mean, honestly, all of them
the
want to
Cavs
avoid
too.
it, obviously, but the Cavs are kind of disastrous.
If the Cavs fall in the
So
plane, it's
it could.
actually that's probably worst case scenario. If the
Yeah,
Cavs fall in the plane,
the Cavs falling in the play-in. I don't know if they'll necessarily get kicked out of the playoffs completely, but I would not be surprised if they end up going to that second round of the play-in to fight for that eight seed, which would be disastrous for the Cavs in
I
so
mean,
many ways.
they were fighting for the 2 seed like 3 weeks ago.
Hmm.
And they've gotten healthier since. Isn't that
Yeah,
weird?
and and if you're trying to sway Donovan Mitchell to sign an extension this summer, fall into the plane's not exactly
But
the
at the
greatest thing to
same
do.
time, with that, you can kind of tell that Donovan and Darius and Mobley and Allen don't work out too well. So I don't think it'd be the worst thing either if they can't keep him based off their success. But just in general, as a team and as the fans, I think if you're a Cavs fan, you don't want to see them fall into the play-in at all.
But so in regards to that, so how do the Cavs avoid a playoff meltdown, especially after what
They
we
don't.
saw?
I don't think
Like,
they can.
I mean,
Um,
we've talked about it. I think there might be a way. I mean, I think for one, I think all three of us agree on this. They have to figure out how to get one of their four stars, if not two, coming off the bench. And I'm not saying playing
well,
less than 30 minutes, but they got to come off the bench. Like, let's get a different rotational look here,
Yeah,
um,
I think
to kind of
I
help the
think
floor spacing and who's running the offense.
more minutes of Donovan Mitchell as the point guard. I don't know if they have to come off the bench. I mean, like, don't hurt their egos if you don't have to. I mean, like, just like, I don't know. I don't like because some people play worse. Some people play better though. But
true.
I think at the end of the day, you play Donovan at point guard more. Don't have the two bigs in the game at the same time as much as possible. And Evan Mobley, I think, start taking threes. You know, you may not make a lot of them, but just make sure like people know, oh, he's going to take a three. We have to at least keep our minds on that. You know,
True.
because if he's a non-threat, then I mean he's a non-threat. You know, then there's just one less guy to worry about.
From distance, yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, if you think about it, right, with the power they have and the unsuccessfulness they have with all four of them in, you can literally play with how many minutes they're going to get. Obviously, they're going to still get minutes together, but you can literally have lineups to where you always have one of the bigs in and one of the guards in. And that could be really good advantage for a team when you always have an
Especially
all-star
with the
caliber,
shooters
two
they've
all-star
got.
caliber players in.
Yeah.
And especially with the shooters they've just obtained. They have so
Hmm.
many shooters now, but if all four stars are on the floor, you only have one of those shooters in, if at all, and they're likely not getting that many looks because one of the stars has the ball and there's a problem with spacing.
Yep.
So I 100% agree with you on that one. And then who do you guys even think the Cavs want to play? Like, what is the ideal if they got to choose where to plant their seed? What's their ideal first round matchup with which team?
I think for a lot of these teams, it's going to be Orlando, and that's not a diss on Orlando because I love what they're doing. I think they're a future dynasty out east, but I did Orlando's offense just isn't great. They struggle to shoot. Their defense is awesome, but I think in the playoffs, you you would totally trust a Donovan Mitchell led offense more than a Paulo Banchero led offense, especially with the
Yeah,
shooters Cleveland has.
Not
Um,
to mention experience too.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, the Magic,
that's
I
it.
guess Joe Ingles,
Hey,
I don't know.
he's
100%.
pretty
I think
solid.
it's
Yeah,
the Magic could likely even next year kind of be the taker of this matchup. But I do agree that the Cavs would probably hope to play the Magic first round
yeah,
because it's just a pure battle of the defenses for the most part, and it could be really close. In the regular season, they split their matches 2-2, and I think it would just the Cavs would maybe in 7 games. I don't know how many games, somewhere between 5 and 7 probably prevail. Could be closed out, but they have a little more experience, a little more star power, a little more um,
yeah.
just right. So I think the
But
Cavs would win that.
Orlando has a chance to get the top two seed this week.
Mhm.
They play the Bucks twice.
Same.
If they beat them twice, and the Bucks are free falling, so I mean, it just I mean I don't want to disrespect the Magic because they're doing something really special this year.
100%.
Um,
I love the Magic, and I thought in our preseason predictions, um, I had them as I think the 10. I don't remember if I had them going into the playoffs through the play-in of the 10 seed, or I think I get kicked out. But I thought of being generous. I thought maybe I was going to get some hate for having them that high. I would have never, in my wildest dreams, anticipated that they were going to be have a chance
Fighting
to end up
for a two
higher than
seed.
the
yeah,
Bucks. Than the Bucks before the season, when everyone was hyped on Damian Lillard, I would have never seen them come. That's
Well,
that's
you don't even
crazy.
have to say the Bucks, the two seed, because that means they were either better than the
Heat,
Bucks or the Celtics.
Sixers, Knicks.
The two seed. That's insane. They have a legit chance to be the second best team in the East in the regular season this year. Nobody could have ever guessed that.
no, I mean the Thunder get a lot of attention, but the Magic in terms of young cores are right there, man.
Oh yeah,
I mean they don't have like an established superstar yet, but Paulo's close. Um,
I agree for sure. I think as much as it hurts me to say, but I think the Magic and the Pacers are probably the best matchups for most of these teams to get first round.
yeah,
Like I said, just because of experience, Pacers have not, or Halliburton especially has not been the same since All-Star break, which sucks. Hopefully he can pick it up for the playoffs or the play-in if needed. But I think overall, the young, inexperienced teams for the Magic and Pacers have the most vulnerability of being beat first round.
yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
The Pacers though they have an offensive pop that if
Yeah,
they're rolling, they could take
true.
3 games from you just like
Easily.
that.
I agree. That's the advantage they have, but
Yeah.
again, that's also the disadvantage because if your offense isn't popping, your defense isn't quite that
No, yeah.
great. So then you really just have to try to chuck up shots and hope they go in.
Yeah, I don't expect the Pacers to win a series, but I would be I don't want to play them just because I think they could give you a real scare.
True. True.
Yeah. I'm actually curious, guys. So, as besides the future, if the Orlando Magic win a first round series this year, that would be a just incredible experience for their guys, like heading into next season. But does that mean anything for you as like this playoffs? Like, does that make them if you see them winning, taking a first round matchup? Are you also like, oh my goodness, like these guys might be pretty dang legit this season? Does that mean anything?
Yeah, I don't know if I mean I think it would be awesome for the Magic and it will be like a signal that they've arrived. But I don't know if it would impact my feelings on who would win the championship. I think any team out east has an equal chance of losing the Celtics. Probably I mean, like I've said this time and again, 2 through 8, I don't have a ton of trust in. Um, so I think any of those teams could upset any of those teams. But ultimately, once they get to number one, I don't think they have a chance. But it would be unbelievable for the Magic, and I mean, I would root for them. Obviously, that would be super fun.
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't know if it means a lot, but we've talked
Yeah,
about this, me and Marvin, kind of in the I think preseason predictions about the Magic have kind of had the Celtics number for the last 2 seasons. Last season, they won 3-1 matchups, took
hmm
two of both of the ones on the road in Boston, only lost the very first one where they had more than half their starters not playing.
yeah,
So Orlando, they kind of have Boston's number, and if you think about it, they match up extremely well. They've got a very, very lengthy defenders, are very deep in that kind of aspect, like with Jalen Brown, Jason Tatum. They've got Franz Wagner, Paolo Banchero, those kind of guys that can match up with them. So as far as the Celtics, I think they would be really something the Celtics might not want to see that much is the Orlando Magic. As far as like overall, just like being a powerhouse team, I don't know if I really trust them that much more with a first round win, but definitely rooting for them like you.
Yeah, to your point, this season and last season combined, the Celtics actually have a losing record to the Magic, 3-4, lost two of them at home and two of them on the road. But like you said, I think honestly, the Celtics probably would be a little scared. But at the same time, the Deacons, I don't think at least for this season will mean too much. I think it'll be great for next season, just because like we keep saying, they'll get more experience and they'll really know what like playoff energy and playoff play is like and how to win because they have would have won it around in the playoffs. So I think it'd be fantastic for next season. But for this season, like Deacon said, I still wouldn't see them coming out of the East, but that would be super lit and it could potentially happen just based off looking at the records from them against the Celtics if they would even get past the second round to get to that conference finals.
Yeah. Like for these young teams like the Magic, like the Pelicans, the Thunder,
Pacers.
the Pacers, it's if they lose early, it's totally understandable. It's fun. I
Hmm.
mean, it's not like it could be disappointing, but it's like, they got their experience. But just the more they win, the more experience they're getting, and the more confidence instilled in them. And I think it'll just boost
Exactly.
them. Um, or
So
that would be the doom because we saw what happened to Atlanta. So
yeah. Well, so one of those young teams that's low-key similar to Atlanta that we saw a few years ago, high power offense, bad defense, is the Pacers. So you don't think they need to win the first round? Like how important is it for the Pacers to win the first round this year?
so they can't lose in the play-in, because Pascal is a free agent, and you gotta convince them that they're up and coming. And you can't get swept either. I think, I mean, they have been hit hard by injuries. Bennett Mathurin's out for the rest of the year, but I think all in all, I wouldn't be upset. I'm expecting them to lose round one, but like I said, if they can win like two, 3 games, then I think that would be a success of the season. Because they weren't like I think I had them as my eighth seed going into the year. I wasn't exactly like expecting what we saw. I mean, I think Hallie's injury kind of died down the expectations of this team, but they were on top of the world. They had beaten, or they made the in-season tournament final, and everyone was super high on them. And I think they could get back to that point, but you know,
Amen. As far as that too, what do you guys think is like the ideal if they were to try to win the first round, the ideal Pacers matchup? Like who do they want to get seeded against?
As
Cavs.
surprising as this may sound,
I
I'm just gonna
agree.
double check the record as well. But Loki, the Bucks, because as good as Giannis has had games against them, they still lost, or at least were very close with those games. And obviously, they're like Deacon said earlier, they're kind of in a free fall right now. So that could be a potentially interesting matchup. I don't think you want that just because I mean it's the Bucks. It's not like you're gonna be like, oh sweet, we're playing the Bucks. We're gonna win. But they do have a 4-1 record against the Bucks this season.
They also
So
had some beef against one another.
They got a little rivalry.
true.
Yeah. But I mean, yeah, Giannis scored like 50
I
points
think,
twice against
and
them,
yeah,
something
I
crazy.
think in two of
Yeah.
them. So theoretically, based off that, you would say the Bucks. But like I said, I mean, you still have Dame, Giannis. They could easily
Yeah.
just say, "Hey, Pacers, you're not going to win a game against us."
Yeah,
So
fun fact, the Pacers have the best record at a 15 and 13, above 50% wins against top 10 teams behind the Bucks and the Celtics in the East. So that
Yeah.
is certainly stands for them. I like the
mhm.
Bucks matchup for sure. I think that would be just a fun one. I like the Cavs one too. I just think
Yeah,
it's the Cavs. Obviously, we're talking about how vulnerable they might be, and it's like a pretty much a high power defense versus high power offense. And I just think the Pacers haven't really struggled offensively, even against great defenses, so they just don't really care enough. It'd certainly be interesting to see them in the playoffs. It's going to be a different atmosphere. The game will be a little more physical, more slow down,
hmm
strategic. They're just an amazing offense, and I think they could also take advantage kind of if the Cavs, like we said, they have spacing issues on offense that could help the Pacers defense, which has struggled this season,
Yeah.
to be any kind of good, really. Um, yeah, all props to the Pacers. I'm rooting for them, and also I just want to shout out every time I can my boy Tyrese Halliburton. Just keep in mind this is the best offense in the league right now, and it's run by somebody that has is averaging 20 points a game. There's some teams that have their third or fourth best guy averaging about 20 points a game, and I love that. He's just a guy, he doesn't need to score, and that just shows how basketball can and maybe should be
Yeah.
played. That just because you have the best guy doesn't make you the best offense. And I just all props to him. I hope they make a part.
I hope he can get back to the early season. I mean, I know the hamstring injury kind of
Yeah,
affected his shot
pre-hamstring
attempt.
injury,
Pretty
Halliburton
special.
that'd be really nice and
I
helpful.
mean, he might have been on pace to make All NBA first team. I mean, that may be a stretch, but he was,
He
I
was
don't know,
hooping.
he was
He was
amazing.
hooping for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, he was fired in the early season. But another team that was looking really good just a few months ago were the Knicks. They were all the hype. We were talking about how they're pretty much the second best team in the East. That's died down a little bit. I would say mostly, if not only because of their injuries.
Yeah.
They had kind of everybody in their rotation, like all the important pieces kind of sitting for at least a little bit, including Jalen Brunson. Randall had just been diagnosed to be out
Robinson.
for a while. Mitchell Robinson's out for most of the entire season. But like, what are their legit playoff expectations given that Randall probably, I think, is he confirmed to be out for the whole playoffs?
Yeah. Well, maybe not the whole playoffs, but
I would assume so, just considering that it
if
was
they
a
make the finals,
I mean, maybe. Which, like you
if they
said,
make the finals, they should not bring him back.
yeah.
Um,
True.
Expectations, I don't know if the expectations are super high, but in my opinion, their ceiling is they could definitely make the finals. Just considering even how their record hasn't necessarily been great with injuries, but considering still how they did play with three of their starting guys out is incredible. So Robinson just came back recently. OG Anunoby just came back. So that could be a really big lifter for them as well. So I wouldn't be super surprised if they make the finals, honestly. Um, like we said, health still a question. They could easily. Oh, OG's elbow actually wasn't fine. He's out again. Brunson's ankle hurts. Robinson's out again. Especially with the minutes that Tibbs plays all these guys too, it could easily be injury fest again too. But I would not be super shocked if they do make the finals. Like I said,
um,
expectation not that's not my expectations, but I can see it happening for sure.
yeah. That I think they got to win at least a series. Or that should be their expectation, at least a series. If they run to the Buck, well, I mean, I'm not even sure how confident we should be in the Bucks, but they do have Damian Giannis, so I'm not like
But they
totally
also
ready to
have
write
Doc
them off.
Rivers.
That is true.
We'll
Um,
get there. We'll get there in a second.
yeah, but I think this team is definitely good enough to win a first round series at least. Brunson's playing out of his mind. The offense does get like stagnant at times, um, but I mean, their defense is so good. If they could have everyone back except Randall, I think there's no reason they can't make the conference finals.
Yeah, I exactly what I was gonna say. If everyone is healthy, which is iffy, I completely have the exact same expectation. But to the Bucks, doubts all season long. Before the season, they were everyone's favorite to win it all. Are we buying or selling on their playoff hopes?
I'm selling
I
that.
mean, I picked them to win the championship preseason.
Yeah, we all did, I think, except for
Yeah,
Valentine.
I think so.
Yeah.
I'm selling
And
them.
I'm not completely. I mean, like I said, they have Giannis and Dame. I'm not completely out. Doc Rivers was not. Doc Rivers being the coach at the end of the season was not my bingo card. That's for sure. And they've been horrible since or not horrible. I think they're definitely under 500. I don't know how far under 500 they are, but the last four losses have been to the Grizzlies, the Wizards,
The
who else was it?
Raptors.
The Raptors, and who they just lose to. I
The
can't remember.
Knicks. I
The
think the
Knicks,
Knicks.
yeah, yeah. They got crushed by the Knicks. It's not looking great. But if Dame can have a couple of good games in the playoffs, I think they could get back to a conference final. Um, maybe that doesn't even sound right. No, I think I'm selling on the.
He's selling too. Marvin, all right, guys, I want to run you guys through a little bit of a Bucks overview here. So they're efficient from three. They're very efficient from three. They're like I think top 10 right side of it, and they're top five in 3-pointers attempted per game. So I was going to leave you good points. They have a really good offense despite all these Damian Lillard kind of doubts of the season.
Mhm.
They have one of the best offenses in the league. They're the second most efficient in 2-point percentage field goals, which is Giannis having in record-setting season of he has like a 63% field goal percentage, something
It's crazy.
absurd. They're not assisting a lot on plays, so I might just kind of a lot of Damian Lillard, Giannis star show. But they still have a really great assist turnover ratio. Keep that in mind. They're also number one in fourth quarter points per game. I think that is a
Really?
very important statistic. I
Wow.
think fourth quarter is when the intensity and the atmosphere really elevates to kind of a playoff situation or the game's really on the line. I think that's interesting. They're one of the best offenses. So in general, they're like top five. So it's not that crazy, but it's a good start. And then they obviously have those two superstars, and I think roster wise, they have plenty of support. I mean, Brook
Hmm.
Lopez is still great. Chris Middleton. They haven't used what's the guy sophomore year, but I forgot his name.
Marjon
Isaiah
Beauchamp?
Beauchamp.
Yeah, I haven't used Bochamp, which is weird, but maybe he has some a big playoff game. Just one big playoff game could give them could turn swing a series. They've got Malik Beasley been shooting out of his mind. Like they've got a good roster. And defensively, that's really been their problem. They've been underperforming dramatically, especially under Griffin. They've actually turned that around in a lot of ways under Rivers, despite, as Deacon said, their record hasn't been as good. But they've been a lot better underdog at defense, and they have again plenty of defensive stars from everyone besides Damian Lillard, pretty much, and Malik Beasley. And they're actually top 10 in opponent 3-point percentage. So that's good because if playing the Celtics, someone that shoots a lot of threes will definitely be key. Um, and they're also top 12 in opponent 2-point percentage, which makes sense with a guy like Brook Lopez. So they seem to be able to have a decent defensive foundation. However, they are bottom seven in opponent percentage of points from two. So opponents are scoring a lot of twos on them. And they are also last in forcing turnovers per possession. That's a big problem, I think, in the turnovers you need to stop. We remember in the finals with the Drew Holiday, they got a clutch steal.
Hmm.
That's they're right now
Or
they're the last in the league at forcing turnovers per possession. That's might beat them in the Heine, and they're also last in opponent points per game in the fourth quarter. So as good as they are offensively in the fourth quarter, that's how bad they are in the fourth quarter defensively. My only hope is they should have all the defensive stars, firepower, and vets to take another level, another step up defensively.
not to mention that when one of their stars, which combined they've only missed 12 games, but when one of their stars in Giannis or Dame don't play, they are combined 4 of 11 or 4 of 10, which is not a good record. With most of those losses coming with Dame not playing, with them being 1-7 when Damian Lillard does not play, and they're 503-3 when Giannis doesn't play. So they definitely need to make sure those two guys are playing because even with like some of the chatter about Dame not being that great with the Bucks this season, he clearly has a really important impact on them winning because they've only won 1 out of 8 games without him playing.
I
So they
think
definitely need him to play.
is you should fact check me on this, Marvin. I think they've won like every single game where Damian Lillard had 10 assists or more, or some style. They've had a really crazy good winning percentage when Damian Lillard is assisting a lot.
I think it's also when Dame scores 30 plus, they have a really good record. And
I
like
yeah.
assertive Dame is the best version of Dame, which makes it the
Hmm.
best version of the Bucks. Like I said earlier, like the roster's awesome. Brook Lopez, he's kind of having an iffy year, but he's still a good player. Giannis MVP candidate, Dame is Dame. Chris Middleton's been coming on as of late, but just in general, like how much can you trust that? Because they just sometimes they just don't show it. And is that like,
Hmm.
oh, we're just winning for the playoffs? But like in general, that usually doesn't work for these teams.
Yeah. And to your guys's to fact check, Lillard when he gets 10 or more assists is what was it, 10 and 2? And when he scores 30 or more points, they're 17 and 3. So once again, Lillard needs to they need to make sure to focus on using Lillard, whether it's even just him passing the ball because they have a good record with that, or him scoring the ball. I'm sure Giannis has similar stats with both those as well. So you really just got to make sure that those guys are locked in and playing the way that they play
Mhm.
basketball.
100%. So it's good. After all that being said, after how much I maybe want to sell them, especially during the season, I can't sell them. I have to buy. I don't know about anything like contenders making the finals, but I'm buying them as a legit playoff team, as
I'm
having a
selling.
legit playoff hopes.
I'm selling, especially I mean after last year too, nobody expected them to lose in five
Yeah.
to the Heat in the
Uh,
first round.
I I'm
It
not
happens.
I'm not a believer in Doc.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
true.
that too.
That's my biggest. That's at this point my
Yeah,
biggest like
yeah.
doubt.
So I think maybe I think they're probably the third or maybe the second most likely team to make it to the conference finals, but I don't think they'd stand a chance against the Celtics.
I
I'm
mean,
selling.
I guess we'll see. I guess we'll see. But I think that wraps up our East planting playoff seeds. Should be interesting. It's coming up soon. I'm excited. Comment um, who you guys think is going to stand the best chance, who coming out of the East, and make sure you drop a subscribe. Floater Gang out.